Hello, everyone, and welcome back to DSP versus the Internet, episode 69. We're now heading into part 2, which is still Ultra member submission, so the biggest level of supporters of this channel who get their clips watched every week. Let us roll into the next clip. I'm actually being told by Dabcans this game, Stray Gods, which I'd never really heard of, apparently did decently. It was released on Steam last year. It made $1.5 million. It must be one of these Steam games that you're like, I don't know, unless I'm a PC gamer, I wouldn't even hear about it, right? Yeah. Okay, let's continue. Marvel vs. Capcom 1. And that's 3. That's 2. CVS. Wow, so this guy does, he covers all the Versus games, huh? There was Tatsunoko versus Capcom in there, too.
Of all the Capcom Versus games, when I think of weird, totally unexpected character appearances, the first Marvel vs. Capcom game is always the first to spring to mind for me. And no other character is more emblematic of that to me than Captain Commando.
Yes, because the previous Versus games had been Street Fighter versus, like, X-Men, or Marvel characters versus, like, Street Fighter characters. This was the first one where they brought in a wider cast. So instead of it just being X-Men, they expanded upon that. Now you have Venom and stuff like that. And then on the Capcom side, it wasn't just Street Fighter, so they added in here Captain Commando, Strider, Hiryu. All these characters making a first appearance in a different game other than their core franchises. It was kind of neat.
Captain
Mega
Commando
Man
was
too.
originally conceived by the US branch of Capcom as a sort of mascot, appearing in instruction manuals for Capcom games in the late 80s, thanking the player for purchasing the game. His first design is, well, it's a lot different than the one he's known for today. If it wasn't already obvious, taking the first 3 letters of Captain and Commando spells out Capcom, a fitting little quirk for a fictional company spokesperson. Capcom itself is short for Caps with Computers, the former name of the company. Capcom also had a record label they released game soundtracks under until about 2012 or so, Superior, which cheekily is just the leftover letters from taking Capcom out of Capsule Computers.
Oh my god!
Back on track here, Captain Commando was redesigned again in 1989, sporting a more detailed, realistic look along with what looks like some kind of alien monkey. Capcom artist and character designer Ackerman, finding the Capcom USA design to be uncool, redesigned him for his eventual self-titled 1991 game, giving him an American comic book aesthetic. Elements of his design, including the futuristic gauntlets, were taken from a scrap design for a character named Future Fighter J, before the decision was made for the then-in-development beat-em-up to use the Captain Commando character. In the not-too-distant future, the world is rampant with crime, and in no place is this more evident than future Metro City. I guess the more things change, the more they stay the same, huh? Captain Commando, along with his 3 companions, Ginzu, Mac, and Babyhead, rise up to stamp out those who would perpetrate these crimes. And that would eventually lead them to Scumocide, the super criminal behind.
This is just one of many beat-em-ups that Capcom made during this era that did pretty good in arcades. They had so many. They all started around like the Final Fight time, but there was so many. They also made a Alien vs. Predator, which was super good at the time. Like the graphics were great, and if you like the movies, you would absolutely love that game. They made a whole bunch of these that did pretty well for the time. But Captain Commando was kind of a weird one because it kind of stood alone. You didn't know what it was, right? It's like Captain Commando, who the hell's that? And you find out, oh, it ties in. It's actually Metro City in the future from Final Fight. Like what?
It all. Captain Commando was a fairly standard 3-player beat-em-up that played similarly to earlier brawlers like Final Fight. It got a port to Super Nintendo fairly late into that console's lifespan that goes for ludicrous prices on the secondhand market. Later on, it got a nearly arcade-perfect PS1 port only released in Japan that also goes for ludicrous prices. Thankfully, it started being included in Capcom arcade compilations during the PS2 and Xbox era, and most recently was a part of the Capcom beat-em-up bundle, as well as a purchasable game in Capcom Arcade Stadium. Though he made a few assorted cameos in other Capcom arcade games, Marvel vs. Capcom 1 is the game that largely resurrected the character from obscurity, even positioning him as one of the game's 2 headlining characters, opposite Spider-Man. Captain Commando is one of a handful of characters in the game on the Capcom side whose theme isn't an arrangement of a song associated with the character from a previous game, but an entirely original track instead. That said, it's a pretty great theme that puts those CPS2 brass samples to work in a pretty great way.
Mhm.
I imagine this is probably coincidence more than anything, where the portion of his theme actually sounds nearly identical to a character theme from the previous Versus game.
Oh, I love this. I mean, I played Marvel vs. Capcom 1 so much, that all the music from this game is ingrained in my brain. I remember all these different songs. And by the way, yes, this video is running at smooth 60 frames, but Marvel vs. Capcom 1 is a very flashy game. If you have issues with that, you may want to avert your eyes right now. I don't know how many of you may be affected by bright, flashy lights, but this game is like bright, flashy light palooza. Marvel 1. So... Cyclops. This is Marvel Super vs. Street Fighter. This is the game beforehand. One game before. Oh, Dan. Dan in the Versus game.
Captain Commando's voice actor here and in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is Takashi Nagasako, whose work spans many roles across Japanese media. But most prominently, he's been the Japanese voice of Dodoria from Dragon Ball Kai onwards, Donkey Kong, and Big the Cat since the early 2000s.
Oh, wow.
And as far as Capcom games are concerned, was the voice of Bowman and Gan in Rival Schools. Funnily enough, he also did voice work for the Japanese dub of X-Men the Animated Series. Before we get into his moveset, I want to talk about his character design in this game, as there's some easily overlooked little nods to Japanese pop culture that are likely lost on the majority of English-speaking audiences. First, his visor. In all of the art for the original game, as well as some more recent art, his visor is generally colored blue. His in-game sprite did have it colored red though, and the Marvel vs. Capcom 1 design gives him a red visor as well. But it's likely that the color change had less to do with adhering to the original sprite and is instead a reference. Take a look at his pre-fight intro, where he uses the visor to transform into his superhero persona. This is more than likely homaging the Japanese tokusatsu hero Ultra 7, who uses the same method to transform.
Oh my god. That's awesome.
Take a look at his taunt.
Yeah, what is that?
Seems kind of random at first, but this one's actually another Toku shoutout. This time to Kaikatsu Zubat, a wandering hero who, after the death of his best friend, goes out and fights injustices.
Oh wow.
The guitar isn't just for show either, it's where he keeps his suit. Capcom's never been shy about homaging anime, manga, toku, and everything in between in their games.
Who knew
the
that?
mid to late 90s is where they did it the most. And Marvel 1 is one of the biggest examples.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that at all. You know, I didn't understand any of those references. You know, you're an American teenager playing this game in arcades. You don't know what the fuck this is. You don't even ever heard of any of those shows, right? That's kind of neat that it had all those references.
Maybe something to talk about in another video. I also like to mention his win quotes, since they harken back to the original US persona that he was created for in the first place. He has one win quote thanking the player for playing the game, as he did in the Capcom manuals.
That's it. Thank you for playing this game.
And also drops a bit of Capcom trivia in another one quote.
Capcom's first game was
With all that
Vulgus,
said,
made in
time to get into the
1984.
moveset.
Yes, I played all these
Captain
fighting games,
Commando,
including
coming
Rival
from a
Schools. I
beat 'em up
played
game,
every one of these.
transitions pretty naturally into a fighting game moveset, and a lot of his abilities in the original game get carried over to Marvel vs. Capcom intact, if not amped up a bit. First off is Captain Fire, a
All
force.
right, well, we're not going to go through the guy's full moveset. Essentially, Captain Commando was okay in Marvel vs. Capcom 1, but not great. He definitely wasn't top tier. In Marvel 2, he was known as a god tier assist, but wasn't a very good character outside of that. There were a few characters like that, because in Marvel 2, there were assist characters who would come in and do a move in the middle of the round, and his is a full column of energy that goes all the way up to the top of the screen. So if someone was up there like flying around or doing something in the air, you call out Captain Commando, boom, you just knocked them right out of the sky. Ultimate defense. Sometimes it was really good for combos as well, but he was one of the best assists in Marvel 2. Oh, God. He goes way into detail about other shit. Yeah. I don't really know if I want to go that much into detail about the obscurities of Captain Commando. Marvel 2, they're probably talking about him being an assist. Oh, look, guard breaks. They're actually talking about it. All right, let's just watch the last minute of the video, the guard breaks. Here you go. Play?
and Captain Kick.
There we go.
If you're going to use him, it's at least worth mentioning that he has a pretty easy guard break setup when snapped in opponents. After snapping an opponent,
Oh, he's talking about guard breaking. I thought he was talking. All right, forget it. So let's hear the outro. Here we go. Never mind.
let's be real here. Captain Commando is cool. His trajectory from a Capcom USA manual flavor character to a brawler protagonist to a fighting game character is about as interesting as they come. And he really does work well in Marvel vs. Capcom as the closest equivalent to a Capcom superhero, outside of maybe Mega Man and Beautiful Joe. He'd be used in crossover games not developed by Capcom years down the line, most notably in Namco Cross Capcom and later on in the same continuity in Project Cross Zone 2.
I don't even know what any of those are. I didn't even know there was a Namco Cross Capcom. I've never even heard of that. I don't think it's a fighting game, right?
He's also a Heroes vs. Herald card in Ultimate Marvel 3 and cameos on the Days of Future Past poster as well. Nash got a Captain Commando costume in Street Fighter V that's
Oh my
pretty
god,
neat,
he did?
as well as a new move and obvious send-up of Captain Corridor. He was used prominently in the marketing for the Capcom Beat-em-up bundle, even showing up in the live-action advertisement for it. If Capcom ever decides to do another Versus game, as unlikely as the possibility feels right now, I hope they'd bring him back. I think it'd make a lot of people, including myself, happy.
Oh my god,
That's
those
gonna-
kids, their faces. Ultra distorted, ugly face. Oh my god. Would I want another MVC game? Yes, but here, let me put it this way. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 just became a game that was insanely easy to play, but insanely flashy, but I didn't feel like it was competitively fun. Marvel 1 and 2 have a difficulty level where to be good, you have to be a good player. In Marvel 3, it was like you just had to learn a pattern and execute the pattern well, and there wasn't much else to it. It wasn't very fun to play when you just randomly get one hit and win the entire game. So they would have to change that. They would. If they changed that, then maybe I would like it. But for me, not too interested in the Versus series anymore. I like the classics. I don't know. I have no confidence they would make another one that would be good, just being honest. So.
Hey everyone, Chomix here. I was a super angsty teenager. I dyed my hair black at one point, Hot Topic was my favorite store, and I listened to Linkin Park all the time. And I
Wow.
still do, in case you couldn't tell by my shirt. Was it a phase? No, mom, stop asking. Nah, some of it was, but I'll admit that a lot of my taste did carry over to today. I'm an emo boy at heart. What can I say? So I'm sure you can imagine my delight when Edgy the Hedgy, aka Shadow the Hedgehog, made his debut in Sonic Adventure 2. Now, I'm mostly joking about Shadow being edgy. That's a pretty common misconception about the character that even the writers of the series get wrong a lot. But Shadow definitely has a certain angst to him that I identified with back in the day and even now. I love Shadow the Hedgehog. This one. Not this one. His mysterious introduction, tragic backstory, his ability to use chaos control and match Sonic's speed. He's so freaking cool. What an awesome character, like seriously. Shadow being front and center right next to Sonic on the game's box art was enough to get me hyped as a kid. But what if Shadow never existed? Believe it or not, there's actually a timeline where this could have reasonably happened. Before the Shadow that we've all come to know came into existence, there are a few other character designs that would rival Sonic in this game that were being tossed around. Today, I'd like to talk about Terios the Hedgehog, the forgotten Sonic character.
He has the oddest filming location. Like, he's filming in his living room like that, right? Like, he didn't even have, like, he couldn't have a dedicated wall or something. It's like this weird background. It's kind of, like, distracting. Like, I'm like, okay, here's the video. I'm just staring at his background, right? I'm like, I can't concentrate on what he's talking about because I can't. It's too distracting. Chow mix. I guess it's all Sonic content, right? Chow is from Sonic Adventure. It must be.
Before we get into it,
Oh no! Come on, can we skip? Oh, it's an ad anyway. Cool. Yes, we could definitely skip the ad. All right, good.
sponsoring this video, and with all that being said, let's get on to today's video. Sonic Adventure 2 began development as soon as Sonic Adventure was released in the US in 1999. To celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Sonic series, as well as send off the final home console Sega would ever produce, Sonic Team wanted to make this game as big and bold as possible. Everything needed to be faster and more action-packed than before. And you can really tell that they put their all into this game because I think a lot of this mentality really shows in the final product. Because after only a year and a half, Sonic Team created what many consider to be the greatest Sonic game of all time, Sonic Adventure 2. The entire game has this good versus evil theme, as you can clearly see from the title and character select screen, and by experiencing the game's story. What's so awesome about Sonic Adventure 2, besides playing as Sonic and Friends obviously, is playing as the adversaries of Sonic and Friends. This was the first major Sonic game to have you play as the primary antagonists of the Sonic series, like Dr. X.
For the record, I've only played this game once ever. It was when it was released in HD for modern consoles. I want to say I played it on like PS4. Did I? I can't remember. I did not like it. I like Sonic Adventure 1 more than Sonic Adventure 2. I didn't like Sonic Adventure 2 that much.
Man. And we'd also get introduced to two new antagonists to even out the playing field with Rouge the Bat and Shadow the Hedgehog. But let's back up again and focus in on the early development of Sonic Adventure 2. Before all else, Sonic Team needed to decide what Sonic Adventure 2 wanted to be. Their team location scouted and drew inspiration from both San Francisco and Yosemite National Park. After all, this game was developed by Sonic Team USA, the American division of Sonic Team at the time. As such, you can clearly see the more American-inspired flavor throughout the game, especially when compared to the first Sonic Adventure. What was hot in America at the time? Edgy action movies, skateboarding, alternative rock music. And what happens when you put all this stuff in a blender and try to mold it into a character? Well, I think you already know. If you
Mega Man NT says Sonic Adventure 2 is the type of game gets 10 times better if you get good at it and you're trying to 100% it. It's not great just for a one-time, first-time playthrough. Well, maybe that's why I had the experience I had with it then.
watch some of
I played it on Xbox 360 6 years ago. Oh, okay.
my other videos, like my Sonic Art Styles retrospective video, you might know that character designs are created after lots and lots of trial and error. It was the same for Sonic himself. Sonic was originally going to be a character named Fields the Rabbit before Sega slapped themselves on the face with some cold water and realized this was a dumb
That totally looked like Oswald the rabbit from freaking Disney. It looks exactly like the same character.
idea. So let's make it even more dumb and make him a speedy blue hedgehog instead. Now we're thinking. So during the production of Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow was no different. Shadow's character design is amazing with his cool hover shoes, supersonic derived spikes, the Kabuki inspired red decals all over his body, but it didn't just come to be this amazing overnight. Before Shadow the Hedgehog was Shadow the Hedgehog, he was originally named Terios, which literally means reflection of. As you can probably tell, Terios looks a lot more Sonic-like than what we ended up with Shadow. Very fitting, seeing as this character was always meant to be Sonic's doppelganger. Actually, now that I think about it, one of the biggest plot holes, as some people like to call it, is how the military and even Amy herself mix up Sonic and Shadow, leading to Sonic being framed for Shadow's crimes. If you consider that this was probably the design that was being used at the time of writing the script of SA2, it really makes a lot more sense how they'd get mixed up. I think they changed the design of Shadow after they wrote this bit in and kind of just crossed their fingers hoping it still makes sense. In most of his concept art, he has spines similar to Sonic, but they're usually a bit longer and more pointed down. There's also this reoccurring theme of a scar on his left eye. Makes me wonder if we would have gotten some additional lore for the origins of that scar or not. Then there's this variation of Terios that gets a bit closer to Shadow's final design. And holy shit, wait a minute.
First of all, I was going to say that looks like Metal Sonic, but yeah, it's this character too.
Infinite? Several character concepts were sketched up and oh god. If you think Shadow the Hedgehog is edgy, Terios says, step aside, get on my level, bitch. There's quite a few of them, like this one with this super cool cloak, or this one with these big goggles and this microphone thing on his head. Dude, you're gonna want to make sure that's in your ear if you want to hear out of it. Oh, and how could I forget this one with the swoopy emo bangs? This guy's out here looking like he just binge listened to the entire Blood on the Dance Floor discography. But hey, I don't have any room to talk. A lot of these character designs look pretty silly, but this is what it took to get to Shadow's final design, so I'm glad they happened. But there's one.
Yeah, I agree. I'm starting to get bored too. Like, at first it was interesting, but all he's doing is looking at concept art and saying, okay, so he originally looked more like Sonic, right? Yeah, see? He originally looked a lot more like Sonic, and that's why they said he would be the doppelganger in the plot, but Shadow really doesn't look as much like Sonic. All right. On to the next video. I've seen enough. A kitty. Whoa!
This is
What?
Jack.
What? Do you guys believe this is real? I don't know if I believe this is real. This sounds like they edited the audio. How could this possibly be the cat's real voice? That is it. What the hell?
His voice is a little deeper than most cats.
No, that's not real. There's no way that's real. There's no way that's fucking real. I'm not buying that. 41 million views from 8 years ago. There's no way this is a real. They totally edited the audio of this video. No, that's
Hey,
bullshit.
buddy.
That's funny, though. Read the description. Oh, does the description say? Hold on. Jack has a form of laryngeal paralysis. His voice changed after his first surgery. Since posting this video, I received a lot of messages from people sending me their own cats that have a similar issue. I want to make an awareness video on this and include cats that sound the same as well as veterinary interviews. If you have a cat that sounds similar to Jack or suffers from any form of laryngeal paralysis and want to be included in a future video, feel free to send me your videos. Thank you for all of the support. Well, they're claiming it's real. I don't know. I'll be honest. It just doesn't seem real to me. Does it? Like, look at the timing when the cat's opening the mouth and the voice coming out. And it definitely sounds like they just ran it through a voice changing app, right? Wow. Seems like
Say
outside
hi.
of that, he's fine, right? Outside of his weird
Say
voice.
Oh boy.
Wow. That is so weird. Yo. Whoa. Yo.
From this
A cat saying, yo. Whoa. Yo. That's great. All right. Well, I think it's a good time. Let's split the part here. Thank you for watching DSP versus the internet. I hope that you all are enjoying the show. When we come back, I think there's only 3 to 4 Ultra Member clips left. So I think in part 3, we should finish up the Ultra Member clips and then get to the submissions tier, which is more varied and more people. So, oh, and by the way, I'm being told that Namco x Capcom was a tactical role-playing crossover game. It came out in 2005. But someone had actually said earlier, it played like Fire Emblem almost, and it was only in Japan. That's why I probably never heard of it. That makes sense. It didn't get a domestic release here in the States. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for watching. See you in part 3 for the finale of the Ultra Member videos.